Je suis objecteur de conscience parce que c'est la seule façon de refuser la course aux armements.
Mä oon aseista kieltäytyjä, koska armeijat ei takaa meidän turvallisuutta ja koska ihmiset on samanlaisia kaikissa maissa.
Jede und jeder hat das Recht auf Gewissensfreiheit.
Ik ben dienstweigeraar geworden omdat ik vind dat geweld nooit iets oplost.
Ich verweigere Kriegsdienst, weil ich das Leben von anderen und mein eigenes auch respektiere. Punkt.
Я поддерживаю сознательный отказ, потому что это не терроризм и экстремизм, а право человека.
Υποστηρίζω την αντίρρηση συνείδησης γιατί ο στρατός είναι ένας μηχανισμός σεξιστικός, πατριαρχικός, βίαιος και μιλιταριστικός.
Ik heb legerdienst geweigerd omdat ik niet geloof dat militaire oplossingen kan bieden voor de conflicten en voor de problemen in de wereld.
Ich unterstütze Kriegsdienstverweigerer, weil es ohne ein klares Nein zu Krieg und Gewalt keinen Frieden geben kann.
Alors, je vais refuser de faire le service militaire parce que je ne veux pas préparer la guerre.
Elke gewetensbezwaarde is een peace-activist en ik steun ze.
Ich bin Kriegsdienstverweigerer, weil Menschen individuelle Verantwortung dafür tragen sollten, dass Kriege nicht entstehen.
Я Мирослав, и я поддерживаю сознательный отказ от военной службы, потому что это движение к свободному миру без насилия.
Warm greetings and good afternoon from Enugu, Nigeria. I am Joy Ada Onyeso, the International President of Women's International League for Peace and Freedom. I am indeed very delighted to be with you virtually today. How I wished I could have been with you physically, but nonetheless, being with you virtually is also a very great honor. This year has brought profound unrest for millions of people, and we are experiencing catastrophic famine, increased conflict, and all of this within the framework of the global health pandemic COVID-19. Of course, this has brought up uncertainties. It has also exacerbated the gender inequality that we already experiencing globally. The current complex situation has also made us to start asking reflective questions, such as, what can we do to advance peace? Now, one of the things I must say that we need to do is to consistently expose the false narratives that fuel war. We are witnessing more investment in weaponry than in human rights. The space for engagement and funding for women's rights peace builders work on the ground and across level is continuously shrinking. And we need to keep advocating and sustaining our engagement for peace-building initiatives across all levels. We can't afford to give up hope. We can't afford to stop the work that we are doing, because at a time like this, the work we've been doing over the years and currently, it's very, very important. The Women's International League for Peace and Freedom will keep deepening her commitment to sustainable peace. We call for solidarity amongst peace and justice advocates. We also ask that in countries that are witnessing active conflicts, that these collaborations are highly important. The time is now for us to mobilize more strategically for peace and to hold our governments and leaders accountable. Peace is a process. Hope will not be let to die. We will keep working for that which we believe in, and that is feminist peace. We do believe that if we are to have sustainable peace and development, men and women must participate in an inclusive process to ensure that we have peace and that development is enjoyed by all. Our human rights are non-negotiable. Our human rights are rights that are inalienable to each and every one of us. And one of our responsibilities as peace advocates and peace builders is to keep pushing the conversation, to keep advocating and carrying out peace-building initiatives at our different spaces. The spiral effect of what we've been doing over the years would come to a fruition. I also want to deeply appreciate the organizers and everyone participating in this great event, that this is a very good time to have conversations as to the future we want to see. How do we start shaping the peace we want to experience, both now and in the future? How do we begin to close that intergenerational gap to ensure that we are also building great women leaders to step in the gap and carry on the mantle of the work we've been doing over the years? I must also deeply appreciate our forebearers, the women who have gone before us, who have created this path that we're enjoying now, who have also made sacrifices too numerous to mention for us to even be at this space and at this time to have conversations like this. Women's International League for Freedom, since its establishment in 1915, has been working towards ensuring that peace is a right for all people, irrespective of your creed. I want to once again appreciate you for your conversations and wish you a very, very fruitful deliberations. And I look forward to seeing the outcome document from this meeting. And I do know that all hands will definitely be on deck. We are all partners in this great struggle. We are all peace and justice advocates. And we would also ensure that the rights of women are enforced, no matter where the woman is. Who live by a creed, no woman, no girl will be left behind. Thank you so much, and I look forward to having more conversations with you. Bye for now.
Hello, it's a great privilege for me to be able to speak to you today and to bring to this World Peace Congress the support and solidarity of UNI Global Union's 20 million members from across 150 countries. There is a long and rich history of the peace and labor movements working hand in hand for a better world. It has always been clear that we cannot separate the struggles for peace and social justice. And I am proud of UNI's engagement with the International Peace Bureau and the clear commitments that we've made to do what we can to work for a peaceful world free from fear. My predecessor as General Secretary of UNI and your current co-president, Philip Jennings, took the decision to take our Third World Congress to Nagasaki in 2010. Peace, rightfully, was the major theme of that Congress, and it was a powerful moment to be in a room with trade unionists from around the world, listening in silence to the survivors of that terrible event. And then inspiring to be as one on the streets of Nagasaki as we march to campaign for a world free from nuclear weapons. The history of our movements is intertwined. Peace and democracy have always been core values of the labor movement. From the fight against apartheid in South Africa to the Northern Ireland, Nepal, and Colombia peace processes, Trade unions have been side by side with the peace movements because it is the actions of working people that can lead to true change. And today we recognize the brave actions of the trade unions across the world who continue to strive for peace, not least those in Myanmar, who together with allies across civil society are struggling again for democracy in their country and the end of the military junta. I'm most excited to look ahead for the difference we can make together. The central theme of this Congress is that in light of the planetary crises that endanger us all, it's only by coming together that we can address these overlapped and interlinked problems. The COVID-19 pandemic, the climate crisis, economic inequality, and a worrying retreat into nationalism in many parts of the world are key threats to peace. These are the same challenges that working people and their trade unions grapple with every day. It is clear that without a just recovery, without building a better system based on equality for all, without reducing military spending and shifting that money to provide for the needs of people around the world, then the prospects of meeting the needs of the world's population and promoting truly inclusive growth and development are frankly bleak. But if the peace movement and trade union movement can build on our shared history, then I truly believe that we can make the changes that are needed. We have a shared vision of a world with peace at its center, of a world where social justice prevails based on the universal recognition of human rights, and where the existential crisis of climate change is addressed through just transition. It is a fundamental principle of trade unionism that we are stronger together, that change comes when we act collectively. We must continue to embrace that principle in our joint struggle for peace and social justice, and ensure that our elected leaders cannot ignore this call for change, that they take the actions that are so urgently needed. The development of our work with the International Peace Bureau has been a source of pride for Uni Global Union, and our commitment to continue to build on this at the global, regional, and national level remains clear. This Congress is occurring at a moment when yet again it feels as if we are at a fork in the road for the type of future for the planet and humanity that might be possible. The peace movement and the trade union movement collectively can ensure that we make the right choice and build together a better, more peaceful world for all.
Ayubowan. Let me first congratulate the organizers of the second IPB World Congress, Reimagine Our World, Action for Peace and Justice. As the chairperson of the Friends of the Earth International, I want to share my vision for peace and a just transformation for tomorrow. Against the backdrop of many political boastings of growth and development, we are facing multiple severe inequalities, crises and conflicts. While the wealthy engage in a continued destruction of our Mother Earth for short-term greed, the rest have to do the same for their very survival. Untamed and irresponsible growth has surpassed planetary limits, and therefore life on Earth is facing extinction. COVID-19, a zoonotic disease, is one of the results of this disrespect of nature. Climate change, as a result of burning fossil fuel, is destroying the planet and people. The rich are getting richer, while many low-income brothers and sisters are facing multiple hardships. Indigenous peoples and marginalized communities suffer from lack of food, basic needs, and a sustainable environment. Friends of the Earth International, as world's largest grassroots environmental network, has a vision of a peaceful and sustainable world based on societies living in harmony with nature, and a mission to build people's power to transform the current unjust system. We envision a society of independent peoples living in dignity, wholeness and fulfillment, in which equity and human and people's rights are realized. This will be a society built upon people's sovereignty and participation. It will be founded on social, economic, gender and environmental justice, free from all forms of dominations and exploitation such as neoliberalism, corporate globalization, neocolonialism, and militarism. We believe that our children's future will be better because of what we do. The IPB World Congress comes at a critical time for us to think about our own future. This decade is critical time for change. We are contributing to the collapse of the planet with precious little time to redress this crisis. We believe a global mobilization for people's sovereignty and environmental, social, economic, and gender justice is a need of the hour and the way to achieve peace. Collectively, we must ensure human dignity, sustainable livelihood, respect for human rights, and ecological and cultural diversity. We call for the empowerment of indigenous peoples, local communities, and women to bring about the transformation towards sustainability and equity between and within societies through creative approaches and solutions. We believe in mobilizing people and building alliances with diverse movements linking grassroots, national and global struggles. As the chair of the Friends of the Earth International, I join the call for immediate action to lead the transformation agenda by changing political governance system to bring about people-centered decision making. I call on people to elect representatives with a better vision for resolving the current crisis. Current geopolitics and oppression, patriarchy, racism, colonialism, and class and capitalist exploitation lead to more and more civil wars. Any future war will be devastating for our planet. War should not be part of the world system. Yet we see military expenditure increasing and world superpowers aiming for warfare. The current environmental, climate, and social crisis all poses the threat to increasing global tensions and a more violent world. We firmly believe that the only way to achieve an equitable and just society is to put people's sovereignty and environmental, social, economic, and gender justice at the center of solutions. I call on all people to join the transformation that future generations are seeking from us and mobilize to cultivate much needed peace and justice. Thank you very much.
Every problem we face has a feasible solution, which we know. There's a feasible solution to the pandemic. How do we know that? Because many countries are implementing. China, South Korea, Taiwan, Vietnam, Senegal, all over the world, countries are able to deal with it. So obviously the way to deal with it. Is the way to prevent the next one? Yes, we know how, just as we knew in 2003 how to prevent this one. So we know the methods, they're feasible. What about heating the environment? Yes, there are feasible measures which will essentially meet the IPCC standards, give us a fair chance of solving the problem, even a better existence. Nuclear weapons, obviously we know how to deal with them, get rid of them. Things like the Iran crisis, as I mentioned, simple solution. Go case by case, there's almost nothing that we don't have a way to deal with. What's missing? The will and the commitment. Now, is organized human society capable of getting to that point? Your speculation's as good as mine. The only thing we can do is hope that it's true, put all our efforts and energy into trying to make it become true. There's no alternative.
Well, good morning. Good morning. You've already heard, there is someone's computer is here. You've already heard some really important video greetings for the morning. I'm delighted to see you all, but I can't see you because I've got lights in my eyes. But I know that there are lots of you already having survived partying, Saturday night partying, and being here with us this morning. I think the video greetings we've just heard are a further confirmation of what we've been saying for 2 days, of how the intersectionality brings us all together. You will see in your program that I'm supposed to be chairing this with our dear, dear old friend Federico Mayor Zaragoza. But Federico is not here. Federico, none of us are getting any younger. You saw Noam a few minutes ago, and me. I'm the youngest of the three, but that doesn't make me young. But Federico is sending us this very important, warm and stimulating video message.
At the end of this very successful meeting in Barcelona, I am so proud that is in Barcelona with my colleagues in Catalonia. I am sure that after this meeting, it will be more clear what we can do. We must behave in another way. And this is the solution. The solution is multilateralism. The solution is to have the first phrase of the United Nations Charter into practice. We the peoples. Yes, we the peoples now, for the first time in history, we can be we the peoples that participate, that are not anymore spectators. We become actors of our life, and we are, as it is said in the article number 1 of UNESCO's Constitution, we are educated, we are free and responsible. Yes, this is the solution. Every human being is able to think, to imagine, to anticipate, to innovate, to create. Every human being is a creator. And then now we must change our behavior. And we must say, well, during so many centuries, we have been always under absolute male power. And we have been obedient, we have been fearful, we have been silent. But now for the first time, we are all equal. We realize there is no discrimination anymore because of gender or sexual sensibility or ideology or religion or color of the skin. All human beings equal in dignity, and now with the capacity to express themselves freely. Therefore, now yes, in 1945 was premature. Now, the human beings, we can express ourselves, and now we can change a culture of war with a culture of peace, a culture of dialogue, a culture of understanding, a culture of listening the others, a culture of solidarity, and not only material solidarity, but also intellectual and moral solidarity.
So you see, age does not make people tired of thinking and does not make people lose their hope in the clarity of a vision for the future. And there we are. I want to now introduce our next message in video from Tørres.
Hi, I'm Tørres, the director of Pathfinders for Peaceful, Just and Inclusive Societies in New York. I currently find myself in Texas, the US, a state with 30 million inhabitants that is now one of the US states busy redrawing voting districts because politicians here believe that if they redraw the borders of the districts based on the census information, they can maximize their voting success, their election results. So they're redrawing the boundaries in order to maximize their results. At the same time, Texas has become infamous over the past few months because they are restricting now the right to abortion and putting pressure on women's rights. We see actually these things: manipulation of the political game and democracy, suppression of women's rights, polarization and growing inequality in many places around the world. Now, many of us, when we think about conflict and the need for peace building, will think that this is most relevant for countries in the south or countries that have already experienced recent conflicts. What we see now, and which is crucial to underline, is that violence level is high in many, many places around the world. 80% of the people killed every year are killed outside conflict zones. We're talking about urban violence, we're talking about women and children being killed in their homes, interpersonal violence. So we see violence, high levels of violence, and we also see triggers of violence and conflict increasing. Before the pandemic, Pathfinders had forecasts made with a team of researchers which showed that unless we do massive improvements, reforms, etc., which I will come back to, we will have 3 more countries in conflict by 2030 and 9 more countries in high risk of conflict. Why is that? Because inequality had been growing and is still growing. We see growing polarization. We see very low trust in politicians and leaders, etc. So 3 countries more than what we already had in conflict, and 9 more countries in risk of conflict. Then came the pandemic and put more pressure on the triggers that we already knew about. We have a world where 5 billion people, more than 5 billion people before the pandemic, had insufficient access to justice. 1.5 billion people struggling with a justice problem they couldn't get solved. We have a world where inequality has grown massively within countries, and now over the past year also again between countries. We have a world where vaccine is distributed, the vaccine against COVID is distributed very unfairly between rich countries and poor countries. And we have a world where billions of people are deprived of the right to social security and minimum standards of life around the world. All of this is creating tensions, it's creating anger. We already know that more than half the world's population is distrusting their leaders and institutions. We know that social protest has been increasing. And while I have a background which is making me convinced that protest is good for governance and democracy, a lot of the protests that we've seen over the past few months is also easily turning into anarchy because it does not have the strong organizations as a base. Now, what can we do in order to assure that the situation we have today is not getting totally out of control and we end up with many more countries in conflict? In other words, what is the 2021 relevant peace-building strategy? I'll give you some of the pillars. First, we have to reform the justice system. We have to make sure that people actually have access to justice and have access to the human rights that they have on paper. So we have to create paralegals, we have to make sure that there's access to lawyers. We also have to reform the police system, the policing. I'm now staying in the US, as I said, where police brutality and racism has been put on the agenda heavily over the past few years in particular, but it was there already before. We need to restructure both the police forces and the policing as such, giving police a sense that they're actually serving the community and not primarily controlling them with guns. We have to make sure the police services are not racist. We have to make sure that we have control over small arms and reduced small arms access for people. Here in the US, the sales of weapons exploded after the pandemic hit us at the beginning of last year, and the homicide figures have increased in parallel. So justice is an important part of the recipe when we go forward. Reduced inequality, another key step for us going forward. We have to look at the tax systems. We have to lower the gap and increase the taxes for the very, very, very wealthy in order to make sure the gap goes down. We have to look at social security systems and universal health care. We have to reduce the gap. The vaccine question and the inequality between countries, high and low income countries, is a highly relevant topic as well, of course. Access to vaccines should be equal for every country around the world. That also means that we have to remove the patents on the COVID vaccines in order for more vaccines to be produced. So we need to build trust. That's my next point. We need to build trust again. Now, how do we do that? Well, no one is going to trust leaders if they don't deliver. So first they have to deliver. Then we have to make sure that there's actually dialogue, and real dialogue where leadership, politicians, governments listen to their people. Some think that democracy is only about elections every 4 or 5 years. I believe democracy is popular rule, and that means that good governance actually depends on politicians and governments listening to their people, getting their input, getting their advice, asking them what their problems and issues are, consulting them, etc. Between elections also. It means respect for collective bargaining. It means respect for the freedom of opinion and the freedom of speech. It means actually the freedom also of expression and protest. All of this has to be guaranteed by governments and leaders aspiring to have good governance. And from all of us, I think for me, as I go forward now after and in this demanding period, I'm thinking dialogue is another key word that we need to take forward. We tend to end up screaming and shouting at our enemies in a very, very polarized world instead of sitting down talking to them. So dialogue, to me, is crucial and should be revitalized. Mandela once said that dialogue is the most powerful weapon that exists, and he had tried quite a few of the other weapons. Dialogue is powerful if you show the willingness to listen to your opponent, talk to him or her, ask why they think the way they think, and try and move the issues forward. We will have achieved a little bit even at the local level. And I think the same dialogue message is valid also for polices, justice systems, leaders, and governments. Take the dialogue forward with your people. Listen to what people are saying. Listen to their frustrations and their anger, and try and understand where they are coming from and what legitimate issues they have, and then take it forward. Dialogue, I think, is crucial. I wish you good luck with the Congress. I have talked about dialogue, but mind you, I do believe that we are not going to sit quietly down, listening, promoting only dialogue. We also know that we have to push, we have to mobilize. Otherwise, there's never going to be any delivery at all. I trust you to take all these issues forward, to mobilize, to organize, and to build those strong, powerful alliances and coalitions that can actually push the issues that we now need the politicians to act on. Thank you, and good luck.
Thank you, Liv. Thank you, Liv. I think her message was a good message for starting this third day of ours. She also recapitulated all the things that we have had going around in our head for the past 2 days. And it's really important. It's putting everything together and everybody contributing their own skills, their own competences to the solution of this complex, highly complex situation we're in right now. There are no simple solutions for what we are going through right now on this earth. And please do not trust those who say that there is, oh, it's easy, all you have to do is X and Y. That is not true. And if you don't listen to everyone's different perspectives, you will make terrible mistakes. And on that note, I would like to call on Binalakshmi Nepram. We call her Bina, it's much easier. Bina, who is from the Manipur Women Gun Survivors Network, but she's also a member of the International Peace Bureau Board. Bina is going to talk to us about patriarchy and gender-based violence. Bina, the floor is yours.
Yes. Is it on?
Yes.
Thank you very much, Lisa, and good morning, and good evening, good night from wherever you're joining in. Can we breathe in and breathe out a bit? It's just, we are live now. We are there together in person. Grateful to all who joined via video. But after almost a year and a half of pandemic, can we just have a sense of joy to be together for the first time, and some of us meeting, and feel the light, the energy of faith, hope, and our collective resistance. Having said this, I promise you I will not lecture, and I will not scare any of us, because it's really important that after this amazing conference of International Peace Bureau and ICIP, I think, and really thankful to everyone in Barcelona, everyone who has made this possible. So let's put our hands together and exercise our muscles a bit, just to thank everyone, Sean, ICIP, Jurdi, Reiner, for your energy, and all who has made this. We were a part of a team for the last 1 year during the pandemic, which met on Zoom tirelessly, but all the groundwork down there. So I just wanted to say my gratitude. I am just here to tell a story. The story of where I come from, and weaving in the next 8 minutes that is left, of how do we, in a militarized zone, find that collective resistance and the support to be able to be surviving till today and to be able to do our work. Thoughts for millions who have died in this COVID. Grateful that we are all alive. We in this room and who are Zooming in. And our condolences to those who have loved ones, including many of our friends and many who are incarcerated in many parts of the world right now, including Myanmar. So I promise that I'll just bring images from my region to describe why we are doing this particular work. This summer, I come across a term called gender ideology. I don't know if many of you are aware. I thought it was about gender empowerment. It was not. It was simply not. In our indigenous parts of the world, these semantics doesn't make any sense to me. And I was petrified when I heard what is gender ideology. And this is becoming a phenomena which is galvanizing groups around the world, started in the year 2000. And I brought these images to say why we have to tell those who are against gender justice that this is not about taking your place. It's not about pushing you from a chair. It's about saying, live and let live. Okay? We gave birth to you, men, women, people of all gender. And so do not get out of the negotiating table. Do not get out of our peace process. This is an image from Manipur. If you come to Manipur one day, these are women selling water lilies. Second, okay, so can I coordinate from here? All right, okay. All right, so, yeah, so anyway, can we change the slide then? Is someone who's coordinating the slides? All right. Yes. So many of us yesterday who were at the panel, indigenous people live in more than 90 countries worldwide, and 2/3 of them are in Asia, where we come from. Next slide. We'll make it very quick. Global armed conflicts, many of the speakers today have also shared. There are known conflicts in the world, 21, and I do not agree with my earlier speakers. There are more than 378 forgotten world conflicts. Many of them are indigenous territories. Next. So we cannot forget those what has happened. Next. This is the part of the world that I come from, and this is home. Where I come from is home to South Asia's longest running conflict. Where I was born, there were 72 armed groups. We have 300,000 troops of the Indian Army. And if you think India is a land of yoga and non-violence, you are wrong. We have a martial law on our indigenous territories for the last 63 years. And this is something which India hides it from the rest of the world, and we are asking India not to. Next. And again, images of many of the conflicts in today's world happen in the most beautiful parts of the world. I should be able to control the technology, then I can just go it very, very quickly. But again, many of the people who cannot be in these global conferences, there are so many. So we have a responsibility that we are able to take back home. These are people from my part of the world, indigenous people here. Weaving is a part of the culture. What I'm wearing today is woven by the women of Manipur, and it's not made in China. And absolutely, and to be able to be to really understand that. So anyway, so today I just wanted to, this is where I come from. All of you are invited one day, okay, to our part of the world. Anyway, so I will go through that, but this is where I wanted to say. There are 350, the militarization that this conference is looking at. What I want to bring home is conferences usually talk a lot, but some of us in this room have come from areas which are deeply affected. For us, conflict resolution, peace building is not a project, it's a commitment of a lifetime, and it's not a 9-to-5 jobs or done only on Fridays. So this is something that I wanted to share and bring home again, because I have 5 minutes left, is in our part of the world, 50,000 lives have been lost. And the reason why I started the Manipur Women Gun Survivors Network was precisely because of the fact that 20,000 women widowed in this conflict. If you think that conflict that we are seeing is happening only in Rwanda or in the areas which are in Rohingya crisis. We are just a few miles away from where the Rohingya crisis is. This is what I'm trying to say. There are so many unreported conflicts in the world. Our media in New Delhi doesn't report. Our media in the capital cities do not report. That's why many of us who are today here, committed in person and in spirit, are doing this work. I work with many of the women in this room. We have a phenomenon called fake encounters killing. And also the whole thing of conflict. And my last slides is this couple of slides, because I want all of us, when we walk away from this second IPB World Conference, that we go back home with faith and hope that this is what we are going to do together. And I'm so proud that it doesn't have to be left to the future, because I have been a part of a culture where we have a 116-year-old indigenous women's movement, because indigenous histories have been deleted from our national histories. That's why many of you in this room, including from my own country, India, will not know about it. That's why I'm bringing this connection between militarization, patriarchy. Indigenous men are also as equally patriarchal as non-indigenous men. I am not idealizing, and we're even struggling with them. So these are women. Ima Momon, I know and work with her. In Manipur, we have 100 plus indigenous women's movement against British colonial rule. And when British left India, the Indian government militarized us, and our mothers started patrolling the streets of Manipur at night with bamboo torches. These are the ways in which they do it. And they're asking for the repeal of the martial law here. We have formed survivor groups all across the region. Each one of us in this room can make a difference, and you are already doing that, and we will continue to do that. We hosted women's peace congregations, as we said. We also write, not all protest, but we also write and research. We drafted legislations in the country to be able to do that. And at the global level, we are working very hard. That's why some of us are here at this conference and continue. We also build alliances with indigenous women leaders from across the world to be able to do what we are doing. And the recommendations that we have are to ensure that the Armed Forces Special Powers Act is repealed, that we have a Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and include the history of many of our marginalized and indigenous communities in the syllabus. Recommendations for the international community. Not everything in India is Hindu-Muslim conflict. There is so many layers that we need to understand. Include us in your stories. And the UN must do what it needs to do right now. UN is not we the people. It's only for the winners of the World War II. The United Nations has to be made accountable, and each one of us sitting in this room must collectively do that, because it is not working. Permanent 5 members of the UN Security Council produces 88% of the world's weapons, and it's these weapons which are fueling conflicts in our parts of the world. America may not have heard of Manipur, and its M16s are in our region, and this is not fair, because it is about our lives. Peace building, disarmament is not to be left in Geneva, New York, or UN conferences hall. It is to be done in our communities and in our constituencies. With this, I thank you so much for attention.
Thank you, Bina. You see how they welcomed you, Bina? Great applause. I'm sorry I had to bulldoze you off the microphone, but it's a very complicated morning, and we have to respect our timing as much as possible. Now we are going to hear a message from former President of Brazil, Lula. You heard that we needed to take some time to translate, and here it is. The video from Lula, please.
Meus amigos e minhas amigas.
My friends, dear comrades participating in the World Peace Congress, dear comrade Philip Jennings, member of the International Peace Bureau, on behalf of whom I greet the delegates of this Congress, comrade Chairman, General Secretary of the International Trade Union Confederation, Thank you for inviting me to speak with you at this Congress on this very important topic of global justice and peace. Peace, such a small word, such a symbolic word, and such a difficult word to be fulfilled. There was a time when we spoke of peace at the end of a war, but at this moment in human history, we are living a war every single day, because the amount of problems and adversities the humanity is facing means that we have to build peace every hour, every minute, every day, every month and every year, because every day we have to win a war. It is the war of lack of education for millions and millions of human beings. It's the war for food that involves more than 800 million human beings per year. Even when the planet produces more food than we would be able to consume, we still have millions of people who don't eat and millions more who die. We could even say that at this moment, humanity is experiencing the following dilemma. There's a part of humanity that does not sleep because it's hungry, and there's another part of humanity that does not sleep because it's afraid of the part of humanity that is hungry. To build peace, we need to solve the main problems facing humanity. It is necessary to ensure that all children have the right to go to school. May every teenager have the right to peace, to study, to have the right to effectively dream of going to university and having a decent job. We need to ensure that everyone has a place to work, whether in agriculture, in industry, or in the commerce. But in every place in this country, someone needs to ensure that people can work, so that people can be sure that they are going to have breakfast, lunch, and dinner every single day. Without it, there will never be peace. There may be peace for those who have the money to build a rocket and take a trip into space, and those who cannot live decently because they live on the slopes of the hills and live on the banks of the rivers, dying with each flood, losing everything they had conquered with each rain. And what about those who die of diseases without being able to have medical treatment, however elementary it may be? And what about those who are not able to come to life because they die in their mother's womb, who's hungry because she does not receive the necessary calories and proteins? Many people don't have peace because they don't have opportunities. Many people do not have peace because the rulers are not concerned with solving the problems of humanity. Each one is trying to take care of what is theirs, of that sector that already has. How can we think of peace when governments spend trillions of dollars to solve the problems of the world financial system, when there was the Lehman Brothers crisis, and don't want to spend the same amount of money to feed poor people from Latin America, from Africa, from Asia, the people who have nothing to eat and are not to blame for having nothing to eat, because in fact the fault is of the rulers. I always say, the hunger is not a phenomenon of nature. Hunger is a phenomenon of the lack of responsibility of the government officials who do not prioritize taking care of the entirety of their people. Speaking of peace means thinking responsibly about how to preserve the environment, how to take care of our water, how to take care of the air we breathe, how to take care of the biodiversity that can mean the salvation of humanity. And the responsibility is everyone's. From the humblest human being on planet Earth to the richest on planet Earth, everyone has the responsibility because everyone is in the same boat. Some earn billions and billions, and others earn nothing over the entire year. Some can eat whatever they want, and the others cannot even eat what is basic for their survival. Until we solve this problem of the distribution of wealth, of caring for the environment, caring for education, caring of our health, caring for employment, salaries, caring for our children, we won't have peace. We may not have war, but we will not have peace. Because it's not possible to sleep in peace. A human being who had lunch, breakfast and dinner every day, a human being who has a very rich bank account, a human being who buys a yacht for $400 million to satisfy his ego and his personal luxury, regardless of the number of children who go to sleep every night without a cup of coffee with milk, or get up in the morning without eating a bread with butter. My friends, you who are participating in this Congress need to help humanity understand that if we learn it, to share what we have of knowledge and share a little of what we earn, we would realize that people were going to build a fraternal world, a more humanistic world, a more solidary world, a truly peaceful world. Because it's not possible to be at peace with an empty stomach. It is not possible to be at peace with our children without being able to go to school. It is not possible to be at peace with millions of unemployed and underemployed. It is not possible to be at peace while few earn much and many earn nothing. The peace we want, it can be achieved if we have the courage to fight, if we don't ever give up, if we are aware that each one of us can take the responsibility to say, that's enough. Enough of an insensitive world. Enough of a world where people are turning into algorithms when we need human beings. We need passion, fraternity, love. We need to effectively make people feel good on our planet so small and so disorganized and so unevenly distributed. I would like to ask all delegates who participate in this Congress. I'm 75 years old, but I'm never discouraged because I always believe that tomorrow we can do what we could not do today. And if we can't do it tomorrow, the day after tomorrow we'll do it. Because the day we stop believing that it's possible to build another world, life has no meaning for people who were born in to talk about peace, to build peace. I want to wish you all a good Congress. May peace reign in this Congress. May peace take hold of the hearts of each one of us. May solidarity and fellowship and compassion among human beings not cease to exist. Because without humanism, there will be no peace. Without humanism, there will always be war. And we need to say that it's not possible to solve the problems of humanity without peace. And peace means a lot to all of us. A hug in your hearts. I send kisses to each one of you. And may you continue to believe that we can build a world of peace. A hug and good luck.
It makes me feel very young. 20 years ago in Porto Alegre, Lula was there, and that was the first time I heard him speak. And now, in these past few years, of course, we've missed him. We have missed someone like him, haven't we? I feel that it's a homecoming, and it makes me feel much younger than I was feeling when we started this morning. Well, the time has come now for the roundtable discussion. I'm going to go and sit over there, but we're very late, but we are going to manage. We're going to manage. And I'm going to call on the people who are coming to speak for the roundtable discussion. First of all, Reiner, whom you have seen a lot of in these days, but he's not going to kill himself coming up the steps. And Mayor Mayoral, would you sit near Reiner, please? Mayor Mayoral, who is the mayor of Granollers, you've heard about him already. Where you want, that's fine. He and I know each other because he has promoted the actions of the ICANN Save Cities campaign, of Mayors for Peace, throughout the Spanish state, but essentially in Catalonia, it's been very strong. Beatrice Finn mentioned it and thanked him publicly on our opening evening. Then I'd like to call on Shirine Jurdi. Is it Jurdi or Jurdi? Or Jurdi. Shirine Jurdi, thank you, from Lebanon. You sit, yes, next to Reiner is a good place. WILPF, from WILPF, the Women's International League of Peace and Freedom, which we all know very well. And she is the regional representative for the Middle East North Africa region. I tend to sort of reprimand everybody who use the expression Middle East instead of West Asia, because I like that better. So you are the West Asia, North Africa representative on the international board of WILPF. And lastly, but not least, there she is, Srishti Aware, is that how I pronounce it, or Aware? Aware, thank you, Srishti. She is from the Indian Institute for Peace, Disarmament and Environmental Protection. Now, let me give you a few rules. We have agreed, I think you've all been told this, that you should have 3 minutes each as a presentation. And then we will have a proper roundtable discussion and people will be able to intervene and comment each other. Is that clear, Mayor Mayoral? Yes, 3 minutes. Okay. Reiner, in the order, you're the last. You're the last. Okay. Well, ladies first. Srishti, ladies and youth first.
First of all, I really want to thank Reiner, Stephanie, Lucas. Sorry, I don't remember everybody's name. And it's really great to get this opportunity to be on this platform from India. And I work with Indian Institute of Peace, Disarmament and Environment Protection. And I greatly work with the government teachers to train them in peace education, and the kids at the border areas to train them for peace education and the higher studies, because we have a problem with border areas in India. We have more than 15,000 kilometers of border area, and the kids do not get employment, education, and all such basic things there. And they have to travel to the center countries to get these basic things. So I proudly work with them and bring them up towards getting their future brighter. Thank you.
Do you want to make an initial statement as well for the round table?
Yes. I believe nuclear weapons should not be considered as a power of growth, rather than economic growth is the power for all the countries. And it should be, we should not only think of our own country, but we should think globally, because this is not an easy task to just power on with nuclear weapons and consider it as a power to our country. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here. First, let me welcome the International Peace Bureau, the people who were working behind the scenes to make this successful, to Heidi, who was the reason also for me being here, to WILPF, and to my home country. Just like now we saw that with MENA, that we don't work from 9 to 5. It's a process, it's our life, it's our cause. This is our daily work that we do because it's something that we live. Today marks the 2nd year for the Lebanese revolution. And as you see in my shirt, it says, the revolution is feminist, الثورة أنثى. This is This is to say that the revolution passed through these 2 years in a process of transformation, in a process of trying to build a change, in a process where people were calling for justice, for accountability, for a change towards a democratic structure, rather than a patriarchal, confessional political system that excludes everyone, including youth, women, and men. So a big salute today for Lebanese and the protesters, the revolutionaries who are at the ground trying to make a pave towards peace. And also a big salute to the victims who have lost their lives, not only in Lebanon because of COVID, but also throughout the world. But specifically, we have here the victims of the Lebanese explosion that went until this very second without accountability, without justice. And this is something that can be a turning point in Lebanon. We are at the crossroad. Either we're going to a state building or we're going to chaos that we have seen in the past few days, where a civil war rendered 6 people being killed and no one getting accountability. This is my main message today. It's not only about Lebanon. Lebanon is a model that I'm going to talk about because it's something that I live on a daily basis. But it's something, as Bina was saying, it's happening everywhere. It's happening in Myanmar. It's happening here. We have Amani. It's happening in Palestine. It's happening in Syria. It's happening in Yemen. It's happening in Libya. It's happening in different words. It's happening among the indigenous people that they are went unnoticed. So this is a tribute for them today, to look so that we can have something together, that we can build together. Like we are 75 nations in here, in person, many around the world watching us now. So we have a message for us to work together that we will be talking on later on. Or
Thank you. No, keep on going if you want.
So most of the things that we have seen is lack of accountability. And as President Lula also was saying here, we need to be united. We need to look at the future together. What is this future that we need to be looking at together? We have a norm that was agreed upon in the United Nations General Assembly, the norm, the responsibility to protect. The responsibility to protect is something that acts as a prevention and as a protection tool. We need to work collectively to fill this gap and to see how can we push together the norm of responsibility to protect towards both a state building, a peace building, a human security approach that we can live in sustainable peace. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shirine. I think we have a point here that could be very, very full of discussion. The responsibility to protect has often been used as an excuse to wage wars. So we want to talk about that more in depth. Mayor Mayoral, would you like to give us a few minutes of introduction? Thank you.
Sí, molt bon dia. En primer lloc, gràcies per convidar-me. Fa goig que un diumenge al matí hi hagi tanta gent a la sala. Mireu, deixeu-me començar per unes paraules de Ban Ki-moon, unes paraules que va pronunciar l'any 2010 en una reunió que vam tenir, una representació d'alcaldes per la pau a les Nacions Unides. Ens va dir: construir un món en pau no comença a les sales de conferència de Nova York, de Ginebra o de Viena. Comença des de la base, als barris, a les comunitats. S'inicia amb pobles i amb líders de pobles i ciutats de tot el món. Ens ho ha dit també Tørres. El 80% de les morts violentes d'aquest món no estan en el marc de conflictes o en zones de conflictes armats. Estan en entorns urbans. I aquesta és una realitat que no podem obviar. Reduir les violències va molt més enllà d'eliminar els conflictes armats. Les ciutats són l'espai de construcció de civilitat, però també l'espai de conflicte. Són espais magnífics, però també poden ser espais terribles. Per això hem d'avançar amb la construcció de ciutats amb un compromís clar i nítid per la pau. Com imaginem aquestes ciutats? Han de ser ciutats transparents, han de ser ciutats en què l'administració acompanyi a la gent, que construeixi, que governi amb la ciutadania. Han de ser ciutats que aprenguin a tenir cura de la gent, a mirar els ulls, a resoldre els conflictes a partir del diàleg. Han de ser ciutats que trenquin barreres idiomàtiques, barreres territorials, barreres sexuals. Ciutats capaces d'esborrar aquests espais de segregació. Han de ser ciutats que facin de l'educació el seu element central. Educació a les escoles, sí, però també educació en les places, als carrers, en cada moment, en cada instant de la vida. Educació en tots els racons, ciutats educadores, perquè, com ens recordava Mayor Zaragoza, educar és contribuir a fer que les persones siguin cada dia més lliures i més responsables. Construir ciutats d'homes i dones lliures i responsables. Ciutats que evitin la segregació. Ciutats que facin d'un objectiu central, que ningú quedi enrere, la seva manera de fer. Que lluitin contra aquests murs, aquests estigmes que deixen gent fora. Ciutats inclusives, per tant, i ciutats que treballin en xarxa. Cap ciutat pot resoldre els problemes en solitari. Només la força i la suma de la xarxa de treballar junts i juntes ens permet pensar en un futur millor, perquè des de les comunitats locals, des de la proximitat, és on podem fer realment els canvis en profunditat. La proximitat, la plaça, el carrer, el barri, ens permet analitzar millor els problemes i definir millor les solucions. I ens permet posar veu als silencis dels estats. Quan els estats callen, els ciutadans, les ciutadanes, les ciutats, hem de parlar per un municipalisme de pau essencial per transformar el món. Gràcies.
Thank you very much. Of course, it makes me think of one of the things we do a lot in our country, which is Italy, where cities long before there was a national country, and those cities are well equipped to deal with problems within the community, much more so than the nation is, the state. And I think we will be talking about this, I'm sure. Reiner, would you like to join us now?
You know, after so many impressive speeches, it is not so easy to say something, but I think there are three messages. The first message for me is, I think we should continue the words of John Lennon and Yoko Ono. I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I think this is the message. We have to stay together to change the world. And we can change the world when we are staying together. I think this message, is for me a little bit the message of the Congress. Or to say it in other words, this is the message that 1%, where the whole richness of the world will not win. The 99% can win when they are staying together. And I think this message we have to bring to the public. And the revolution we have to make today is not to occupy states' power, is to change the minds and the behavior of the people, that the people are again going on the street for peace. And this is the message, hopefully, from this Congress. Go home and work for more peace actions, because only peace actions and activities will change the situation in the world. It will stop the double burning by nuclear weapons and climate crisis. That is, I think, our hope, but this is also our responsibility.
Thank you, Reiner. Thank you. Thank you. I'm not sure that everybody agrees with you on this. I think there are other aspects, such as education, such as the things I think that Srishti works towards. Would you tell us a bit more in detail about what you see as the future commitment towards building peace in the broadest sense of peace?
I have been in the university in India, so it's a life example. We have a reservation quota for other states' students to come into our states and study. And most of them are from the border areas who come to higher studies here. But I've seen they only have like 1 or 2 students coming into the college to study, because it's difficult for them to travel to our states in the central India to come to study. Plus they have low reservations, so they actually do not have access to study. That is the first point. Second, because they don't have access to study, automatically they don't have any jobs. So this leads to terrorism in the border areas. The people, the children, the kids, and the teenagers, every category are being tried to brainwash in the border areas. And it's not only the border areas of India, Pakistan, India, China, or just Indian, to our side of Indian borders. It is the same with the Pakistan border, it is the same with the China border. We are human beings, we are kids, we are children, we are adults, we are people. We want to study, educate, have jobs, have a good life, have big dreams. But unfortunately, this is the scenario there. So it is a very privilege to work, a very big privilege to work with them and bring them with us here to get them first the value education, then the peace education, and then the further higher education and higher studies. I think the country's budgets should be designed or dedicated more towards health, food, shelter, and education, and rather than in the war development and the destruction development. That is what I have to say. Thank you.
Srishti, can I ask you a question? It may be difficult, perhaps, for you to answer. Did you hear Ayung, our friend from Korea, from the Republic of Korea yesterday, when she told us about peace education? And she gave quite a very strong appeal, saying peace education should not just be peace education, it's education to life. That's what we're on about. It must be in every single aspect of life, not just one of the disciplines in the teaching. Is that something that you feel as well?
Personally, when I started working in this, I thought, okay, we used to study a subject called value education, and then I got introduced to the peace education. But then I thought it's not just peace education, it's kind of some experience to be experienced widely. And it's not some kind of curriculum, but it's a very practical thing. Peace education is not to be considered as a classroom subject, but it has to be considered and worked upon. It is an action plan and not just a classroom subject.
Very good, very good. I think Reiner will approve of that, if it's an action plan. Shirine, you mentioned the responsibility to protect, and I have already said that this has often been used as an excuse to wage wars. We all know this, but obviously there is such a thing as a responsibility to protect, meaning that it is the duty of the human community to stop crimes against other humans and to stop injustices towards other humans. Would you tell us a bit more about what you meant when you said the responsibility to protect? I'm sure you didn't mean we must go with aircraft carriers and bombers.
Never. Thank you so much. And that's very important for us maybe in here to clarify this, because that was the major misconception that led, for example, to the inability for us to have a resolution on responsibility to protect in Syria, in Yemen, and that's what exacerbated the violence and the crimes that were committed without accountability. Let me go back to what is a responsibility to protect. So responsibility to protect is mainly to say that the state sovereignty is not a privilege, it's a responsibility. And that's like, it's based on the 3 pillars. Unfortunately, the word powers resorted to the last pillar, which is the military intervention in Libya, which rendered responsibility to protect later on unable and feeble to do any kind of real responsibility to protect in conflict areas. But the responsibility to protect is not this. It's not, and definitely we do not endorse, and definitely we, as civil society, we need to fill this gap, and we need to put states responsible. Anyway, they had like a moral obligation and an ethical obligation not to have a veto when it comes to responsibility to protect. And maybe this is like our responsibility to have our states accountable, not to veto resolutions that has to do with responsibility to protect, because it's the protection of civilians and populations against crimes against humanity, war crimes, genocide, and war crimes. So responsibility to protect, first pillar, and this is like what I'm calling for, is when the state is unable or unwilling to protect its civilian, then the international community has the responsibility to come in and offer a help. So within these 2 pillars, it's what I'm calling for, and it's the international community through the United Nations to come and rescue. Like, for example, in Lebanon, just to give an example, we think there's a genocide, there's crimes against humanity in Lebanon, and we see that the human security indicators in Lebanon have decreased in terms of the social well-being. Like now, you were talking about education, and we're afraid that education, even in Lebanon, is going into very primitive things, because most of Lebanese are traveling because of the financial situation, because like Lebanese pound lost more than 90% of its value, the hyperinflation, the explosion that led to more than 200 people being killed and more than 6,000 being injured. And when we talk about injury in the explosion, we don't mean like a scratch. It means people lost their eyes, lost their arms, lost their hands, lost their fingers, lost their organs, because it were all shattered glasses around everywhere. So this crime is going until this second without accountability, without justice. And here it's a vivid example of how the state, it's not only not able, they are not willing, because we have seen this. And that's why now we have seen people going down the streets calling for accountability. So it's a vicious circle of injustice, and there is no justice, there is no peace. And we need to have the responsibility to protect in that aspect.
In that sense,
Yeah.
in that sense, I think we could all absolutely agree with you. But it seems to me that when in the 1990s, some of us, I'm so old, I've said this several times this morning, when in the 1990s we tried to work towards a reform of the United Nations and eliminate the power of the veto and the 5 permanent members and and increase the democracy of the United Nations. And of course, all the countries all decided that the reform of the Security Council just meant I want to be on the Security Council, you know. But obviously, this is not what we're talking about here, and I can see Reiner shaking his head on this.
I think we should be very cautious. I think we should not use the word responsibility to protect. I think these are words for imperial engagement in other countries, done by the big powers in the world. And we should be very cautious to use this, because we are going on the wrong way. There are alternative words which impress our feelings. And the main alternative word is the solidarity of people. People have to work together to avoid the imperial misuse of actions interfering in the development of other countries. So I'm very concerned that in the peace movement we are using the word responsibility to protect in a positive sense. We have all the examples. We know Syria, we know Libya, we know Yemen, and we can continue. And all these aggressions from outside are done under the words responsibility to protect. We should be very, very careful using the words. They are not helpful for peaceful development inside the countries, between the countries, and international community.
Okay. I think we agree on that. Do you want to say something very quickly, because I'd like to pass to
Yeah, and I
Mayoral.
think lots of resolutions happened, if we see, like after 2005, for the protection of people. And that's why, because of responsibility to protect. So when it went with resolutions of protection, it was based on the responsibility to protect, even if responsibility to protect was not mentioned in the resolution itself. And when we talk about, it's very easy to say things when we're not living the problem, we're not living the injustice, we're not being killed on a daily basis. How can we move from this vicious circle of being killed every day if we do not have the responsibility to protect in terms of a prevention lens and in terms of the assistance for the humanitarian and the rescue in terms of justice and accountability? Thank you.
I think we're going to have to leave this at this point now. And I think I'd like very much to go back to Mayor Mayoral and to go back to the idea of cities as communities, and the fact that cities have learned over many centuries, especially the cities that are not capital cities, have learnt how to solve problems without resorting to war. Can we teach states a lesson as cities?
A mi m'agrada poc donar lliçons, m'agrada més escoltar i mirar de generar històries en positiu. No? Vaig aprendre a ser poc radical amb aquest tema un dia que en un debat sobre pau amb alcaldes, un alcalde palestí, després de que jo expliqués coses fantàstiques i molt poètiques, em digués: per mi la pau és que el meu fill torni de jugar al parc viu. No podem aplicar uns rasants idèntics perquè, com deia l'amiga libanesa, és molt diferent el Líban que Granollers. Jo m'he passejat per ciutats del Líban, no? Però, en tot cas, anant a una visió més global del problema, efectivament les comunitats locals són claus. Per això cal avançar en termes d'empoderament. A vegades és molt difícil perquè la democràcia, en alguns llocs, és d'una feblesa extraordinària. Per tant, hi ha una lluita fonamental, que és per falcar estructures democràtiques arreu. No hi ha, o hi ha solucions molt difícils sense falcar aquestes estructures democràtiques i, per tant, la lluita és per la dignitat, en definitiva. El discurs que jo he fet aquí l'he fet en altres llocs, l'he fet al Líban, per exemple, però quan analitzo les condicions al Líban entenc que és molt difícil el que jo explico, perquè les estructures de poder són molt complexes. Nosaltres, més que donar lliçons a l'Estat, el que hem de fer és no esperar-nos el que ens diuen els estats, avançar, segurament d'una manera asimètrica, cadascú amb les seves forces, amb les seves potències. Un exemple, quan Manuela Carmena va ser alcaldessa de Madrid, es van organitzar 2 fòrums per analitzar a nivell mundial, per analitzar les violències i per promoure l'educació per la pau. Ara que hi ha un altre color polític a Madrid, aquests fòrums no es fan. S'han desplaçat a Mèxic, i ho farem la setmana que ve. Per tant, el que hem de fer és, a partir de la realitat de cada lloc, buscar les millors condicions possibles per avançar, per generar històries que no tinguin marxa enrere, que siguin canvis reals, que falquin comunitats i que aquests petits exemples ens serveixin per avançar cap a una transformació del món. No? I alhora, promoure la xarxa de ciutats capaç de remetre missatges molt potents, molt sòlids i molt capaços d'explicar que el món necessita una visió de justícia, de dignitat fonamental per evitar les guerres. Per tant, més que donar lliçons, el que hem de fer és nosaltres enfortir les nostres estructures, les nostres estratègies, espai a espai, comunitat a comunitat, i aprendre a treballar en xarxa perquè el món del futur segurament serà un món amb unes fronteres molt més diferents dels que tenim avui, potser sense fronteres.
Thank you. Let me take this opportunity also to thank the interpreters. That was excellent. All of you, what you've been doing has been excellent. And I am delighted that I was able to follow so clearly what Mayor Mayoral wanted to share with us. And I thank him very much. We're coming to the end of our time. In fact, our time has already ended a little while ago. I'm sorry, I'm not very good at keeping time, but there are too many interesting things. I think, Reiner, it is your turn. If you want to sort of sum up and close, maybe we could do that.
First of all, I'm very happy that we had a controversy in the podium. This shows we are united in many points, but we have also points which we should discuss. And that is great, and that should be our culture. Yeah, our culture is dialogue, finding common suggestions, but also have a very clear and very positive and nice discussion where we have different thinkings. And it would be horrible when in such a diverse world, with such different conditions, we don't have different opinions. So I'm very happy that we could show this on this podium. But I think, I would like to come back with one sentence in the summary, which takes up Lula. When Lula speaks about hunger, and we now have again more than 800 million people going hungry to bed, and we have $2 trillion we are spending every year for military purposes, for war and destruction. That shows the reality of the world. And that shows our work to do. We have to change this. We need 0 for military purposes, and we need 0 for hunger. Then we had a big step in progress. Because this also means that people will take much more power and will be much more self-organized. And that is the future. People in their own organization will change the world. I think this is the message of the Congress, and in this case, also we both totally agree, I think.
Excellent. I'm glad that we agree. Yes, Mayor Mayoral?
15 segons de publicitat. La setmana que ve a Mèxic hi ha el Fòrum Mundial de Ciutats i Territoris de Pau, impulsat per un munt d'organitzacions, entre ells alcaldes per la Pau, alcaldes i alcaldesses per la Pau, i que segueix l'estela, la petja que va deixar Manuela Carmena. Us esperem també a tots que connecteu amb aquest congrés perquè farà la reflexió a partir d'aquestes realitats territorials que tenen una vocació i una visió transformadora.
Thank you so much. Yes. I am delighted to close this roundtable, but with a little memory from Italy, which is where I come from, which is not very well represented here except for me. But Italy is the country of the 1,000 cities. The state was sort of an afterthought. It's only 100 years old. Our entire culture was born in our cities. And I think cities are a vision for the future because they tend not to be nationalistic. They tend to work towards the benefit of the community of all who live in them, or at least they try. And if they have good mayors, like Mayor Mayoral, they succeed. Thank you all.